break you. That's what it's trying to do.
Welcome back to your nerdy show. I'm your host, Spoiler Master. It has been a long 5 years since we last dove into the frozen landscape of the HMS Terror, or the haunting spirits of the Pacific Northwest. But AMC's anthology series is finally back. This time around, we are shifting from historical maritime disasters to the claustrophobic, bone-chilling halls of a modern-day mental institution. This season is based on Victor LaValle's incredible novel, The Devil in Silver. And if the premiere is any indication, we are in for a ride that is part psychological thriller and part supernatural nightmare. We start things off with a sequence that sets the tone perfectly for the rest of the episode. We're at the new Hyde Psychiatric Hospital, and the atmosphere is heavy. A nurse is frantic, informing a colleague that a patient has died. But this isn't your typical passing. The body is twisted into a shape that shouldn't even be possible for a human being. The nurse who gets a look under the covers is horrified, describing it as if the man literally tore himself apart from the inside. Right away, we see the true nature of this institution. It isn't about healing. It's about containment and optics. The staff's only concern is moving the body before the other patients see it and panic. There's a moment where a male nurse has to use actual physical force just to straighten out the patient's curled up limbs, and you can practically hear the bones creaking. As they haul him through the dark corridors, the nurse wonders out loud if this was really a suicide or if something else happened. But his colleague just scoffs. It's clear that the authorities here have zero interest in an investigation. They just want the evidence gone. It leaves us wondering right from the jump, what is actually happening in this building? And what are they so desperate to hide? A drum kit and a downward spiral. To understand how we get into the meat of the story, we have to look at our protagonist, Peter, who everyone calls Pepper. When we first meet him, his life isn't exactly a horror movie. It's just a stressful, everyday struggle. Pepper is a guy with big dreams and a bit of an impulsive streak. He's obsessed with his drums and decides to drop $4,000 on a professional kit, thinking he can turn it into a business by hosting weekend classes. The problem is that he and his partner, Marisol, are living paycheck to paycheck. Marisol is supportive of his passion, but she's the realist in the relationship. She's worried about their finances, sure, but she's even more worried about her ex-husband, Ivan. Ivan is the type of guy who is looking for any reason to claim Marisol is an unfit mother so he can take away their daughter, Isabel. Having a guy playing loud drums in a tiny apartment is exactly the kind of ammunition Ivan would use. Things take a turn for the worse when Marisol tells Pepper she needs to use their savings to fly out and visit her sick mother in Orlando. She asks him to put the drum kit on hold, but Pepper has already pulled the trigger on the purchase. This causes a massive rift between them because, for Marisol, this wasn't just about the money. It was about the fact that they were supposed to be a team making these decisions together. Pepper tries to promise he can make the money back in 3 months with odd jobs, but the damage is done. The tension reaches a breaking point when Ivan shows up unannounced. He's being aggressive and physical with Marisol, and Pepper just snaps. He's tired of seeing this guy bully the woman he loves. Pepper rushes in, pushes Ivan to the ground, and starts absolutely unloading on him. He's screaming that Ivan doesn't deserve his family, and he's clearly lost in a fit of rage. When the cops finally arrive to break it up, Pepper is so blinded by adrenaline that he doesn't realize who he's fighting. In the scuffle to protect Marisol, he ends up punching the police officers. This is the moment where his life changes forever. He's arrested, and we meet 3 cops who he nicknames Huey, Dewey, and Louie. They are trying to decide what to do with him. Louie wants to follow the book and take him to the precinct, but Huey is the one who suggests a shortcut. He tells Pepper that if they book him for assaulting officers, he'll have a permanent record and won't get bail. But if he agrees to a 72-hour psychiatric hold at New Hyde, it stays off his record. Pepper, thinking he's being given a lifeline, agrees. He thinks he's just going to ride out 3 days in a hospital and then go home to fix things with Marisol. But the second he walks through those doors, he realizes he has made a massive mistake. The vibe of the place is eerie, would be an understatement. He meets Dr. Anand, the man in charge, who tries to play the kindly doctor role, telling Pepper he isn't a prisoner, even though they keep him in handcuffs for the intake. The summoning and the 72 hours. The first person Pepper really connects with inside is a patient named Dory. She's observant and has this unsettlingly calm way of speaking. She looks at Pepper and tells him flat out that he was destined to be here. In her mind, there are no accidents at New Hyde. She believes everyone involved, the cops, the doctors, is being manipulated by a mysterious entity, she calls him. She claims Pepper wasn't arrested. He was summoned. She tells her own story of how she ended up there, thinking she was just going to an eye appointment before her husband left her there, claiming she had been acting strange. She even mentions meeting a Dr. Walter, the founder of the hospital, which is terrifying because Walter has been dead for years. Dory's advice to Pepper is simple but chilling. Be obedient and do whatever they say. But that's easier said than done. A nurse gives Pepper a pill, telling him that if he doesn't take his meds 3 times a day, he won't be discharged. He's so desperate to leave on Monday that he takes it, but the side effects are instantaneous and brutal. He loses his balance, starts crawling on the floor, and begins to hallucinate, or at least he thinks he is. He sees a dead man with a slit throat standing over his bed, whispering that he was summoned and needs to find out who did it. When he finally wakes up, he meets his roommate, a guy named Coffee. Coffee is exactly what his name suggests, an addict who is desperate for a caffeine fix. When Pepper tells him he's leaving in 3 days, Coffee gives him this look of pure pity. It's the look of someone who has heard that lie 1,000 times before. From here, things get even more surreal. Pepper is forced into a group therapy session where a doctor is lecturing about Moby Dick, and suddenly a body drops right out of the ceiling. Pepper had already noticed a dark, gaping hole in the ceiling of his own room, and he'd been hearing scratching sounds that definitely didn't sound like rats. He starts screaming and cowering in the corner, but when he looks around, no one else is reacting. The doctor and the other patients see nothing. To them, Pepper is just a man having a violent, psychotic break. This is the ultimate trap of New Hyde. If you see the truth of what's happening, you look insane, which gives them the perfect excuse to keep you there. When Pepper finally regains some clarity, he's horrified to learn that it's already Tuesday. He has no memory of the last 3 days. He's essentially lost the 72 hours he was supposed to serve. When he realizes they aren't going to let him go, he loses it and attacks Dr. Anand. The cops are called back in, and Pepper is drugged and restrained. The corruption of New Hyde. As Pepper is drifting in and out of a drug-induced haze, we start to see the cracks in the system through the eyes of the police officers. Louis, the cop who originally wanted to follow the rules, is starting to feel incredibly guilty. He points out that the evaluation system at the hospital is flawed. He sees that Pepper is only acting out because he's being pumped full of heavy psychiatric meds that he doesn't need. But Dr. Anand is cold about it. He explains that they are the only functioning wing left on the compound, and they can't risk their jobs by releasing a non-compliant patient. He even goes as far as to say that most of the people here are the scum of society who have nowhere else to go. So the hospital is actually doing them a favor by keeping them. It's a classic case of institutional rot, treating human beings like numbers on a chart rather than people with lives and families. This brings us back to Huey, the cop who suggested this whole plan. There's a strong theory that Huey isn't just lazy. He might be getting a kickback for bringing unclaimed people to the hospital. These are people like Pepper, isolated, with complicated domestic situations, who won't be missed immediately. The hospital gets fresh bodies to experiment on, and the cops get to clear their books of difficult cases. The episode really hammers home the idea that this hospital is a living, breathing entity of its own. Coffee tells Pepper that the only thing he really risks losing in this place is his soul. He explains that the dead man Pepper has been seeing was the previous resident of their room, a man who was trapped just like him. Coffee admits he doesn't know if the hospital was built on an evil place or if the things they do there have invited evil in, but he shows Pepper a massive, jagged scratch mark on his arm. This is our first real hint at a physical creature. It suggests that there is something moving through the walls and the ceilings, something that might be a shape-shifting entity feeding on the misery and souls of the patients. There's a theory floating around that Dr. Walter, the founder, might have tried to find a way to achieve immortality through his experiments, and instead turned himself into this devil in silver. If the hospital benefits from the patients' bodies through government funding or medical research, this creature might
might be the one collecting the spiritual tax.
The tragic fate of Officer Louis. The ending of the episode is where things go from unsettling to absolutely horrifying. Louis, unable to live with the guilt of what they did to Pepper, decides to take action. He tries to leave the hospital and mentions that he has already contacted a journalist to blow the whistle on the malpractices at New Hyde. But as he tries to find the exit, the building seems to warp around him. No matter which hallway he takes, he can't find the way out. It's like the hospital is a labyrinth designed to keep its secrets inside. He eventually finds himself in a dark, decrepit basement where he comes face to face with a nightmare. He sees a figure that appears to be Dr. Walter, but it's not a man anymore. His skin is literally sloughing off his skull, looking like rotted parchment. The creature looks at Louis and finds his desire to leave laughable. It's a chilling moment because it confirms that the supernatural elements Dory and Coffee talked about are very real. In a desperate attempt to defend himself, Louis pulls his service weapon and points it at the creature. But then, the horror takes a psychological turn. Louis loses control of his own limbs. It's as if an invisible force is grabbing his hand and turning the gun toward his own head. He's fighting it with everything he has, but he's powerless against this entity. The gun goes off, and Louis falls to the floor, dead. When the smoke clears, the creature is gone. Now, was this a real physical encounter? Or did the devil simply project an illusion into Louis's mind to force him to commit suicide? Either way, the result is the same. The one person who was willing to help Pepper is now gone, and his death will likely be covered up just like the patient at the beginning of the episode. We're left with so many questions as the credits roll. Who is Antoinette from Pepper's letter? And how does she fit into his past? Who was the little boy in his dream? And most importantly, how is Pepper going to survive 2 weeks in a place that has already claimed its first victim of the season? This premiere was a masterclass in building dread, and it's clear that New Hyde is a place where reality and nightmare are one and the same. I can't wait to see how this mystery unfolds, but one thing is for sure, the devil in silver is just getting started.
No, what the heck, I'll laugh anyway.